Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie Weaver coming to you from our blue and yellow kitchen under stay-at-home orders like everyone else is. I'm here with Microwave Boy on the camera. Good morning, Microwave Boy.
Hello, Steph.
And Daisy the Golden Retriever may be walking through at some point. Today I'm the author of a book called The Migraine Relief Plan, and today I'll be making my Firehouse Turkey Chili from that book. I'll also post the link on Facebook to a version of it that's been on my blog that's a vegan version, but you can make this vegetarian or with meat. I'm going to be using ground turkey today. So I've got my pan heating on the stove. I'm going to add a little bit, about 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, my cooking oil of choice. And you don't want to let the olive oil heat for too long. You really just want it to warm up before you start adding ingredients, because you never want oil to smoke. That's not a good thing. You just want to see a little bit of a shimmer, and I also just want to make sure that the whole bottom of the pan is covered. Then I'm going to put my diced onion, yellow, white, or brown, all work fine. And for my migraine people, you would use 2 bunches of green onions, also known as scallions or Chinese onions, because onions can be a migraine trigger for people until they're tested. And the way that my plan works is we give you 75 recipes that you can live on to kind of get to a nice baseline with seeing how much anti-inflammatory eating and migraine trigger-free eating helps you. And then you can test foods individually and get as many of them back in your diet as possible. My chili also includes 1 large or 2 or 3 small diced carrots. So I'm going to put those in with the onion. And you want to wait until, for a couple minutes before you add, if you're going to include garlic, which you don't have to. This is 3 kind of fat cloves of garlic that I've minced up. You want to wait a couple minutes for those vegetables to release some liquid, because if you put garlic straight into oil, garlic is very dry as a root vegetable, and it's a bulb actually. And so what happens is that's why it burns really easily. So you want to let those vegetables release some moisture before you put your garlic in the pan. So I'm going to go give these a stir, let them cook for a minute, and then I'm just going to tell you about the other ingredients while these start to cook, and then I'll kind of show you what those look like. So if you have dried oregano, I like about a teaspoon of dried oregano in this. I'm actually out right now. I do have oregano growing in the garden, so I may be firing up my dehydrator, which is not something normal people have. That's when you're a food blogger, you have stuff like that in your house. About a teaspoon of ground dried cumin seed and a tablespoon of any kind of chili powder that you like. I happen to have Trader Joe's right here. A pound of ground meat is the option for this recipe. We really like ground turkey. Ground chicken would also work. If you're going to use regular lean ground beef or ground pork, they both would work for this recipe, but I would recommend pre-cooking them, pouring off the oil, and then kind of removing the meat and then starting this step, because you don't want too much of that fat in the dish. But grass-fed beef, totally fine to do it like this, and any kind of game meat. So if you happen to know hunters and you have ground venison or ground elk or ground bison, any of those all would be great in this recipe too. The other ingredient is some kind of cooked beans. Kidney beans are sort of traditional. I've made it with those. What I happen to have was black beans that I did in my Instant Pot actually early this morning. So it was 1 cup dry. This is essentially 2 cans of beans, thereabout. And then about a 14.5-ounce can of diced tomatoes, tomato puree, whatever you've got. I used no salt added. That's going in.
How long did it take you to make the beans in the Instant Pot?
Oh, so the Instant Pot, so they were soaked overnight, and so I have this really great little, my friend Annie gave me all these little kitchen magnets, which when she gave them to me, I thought, I'm never going to use those. I use them all the time. So black beans, if they're completely dry, and you put them in the Instant Pot with water, 20 to 25 minutes at high pressure, but only 8 minutes if they've been pre-soaked. And I always recommend pre-soaking beans because it removes the coating on the outside of the beans that keeps them from being digested. So it makes them far more digestible, easier for you to process and get the nutrients out of those. So it takes maybe, I think I put 2 or 3 cups of water. I actually didn't have any seasonings. I just threw them in here. I woke up really early this morning. not sleeping well like maybe a lot of you, so I was like, oh, I'll get those beans started. Threw a couple cups of water, the soaked beans, turned it on, set it for 8 minutes. And then what happens is it just keeps it warm while it depressurizes. So when I got up, they were completely cooked and I just drained them. Had a few on my blue corn tortillas for breakfast this morning, and the rest are going to go in this chili. This is a great recipe, so any kind of beans that you have, this will work, and that's why I'm sharing this. It's super adaptable. If you don't have meat, you can make it just with the beans, or if you're vegetarian or vegan. And then the only other ingredients that are a little unusual, and these are based on, let me just give this a stir real quick here. And I'll just show you what it's looking like so you can see what I'm looking for. Okay, I'm just going to hold it. So it's starting to get, the onions are starting to get a little bit golden, but they're not as brown as I would like yet. And I'm not getting a whole lot of color on the carrots. I'm not expecting to get a ton of color on the carrots before I start adding other stuff. But I want to give this a couple more minutes, but I can go ahead and add my garlic now because some moisture has come off those veggies, so we're good to go on that. So I'm just going to stir that in. And then I'm going to tell you about the sort of unusual ingredients of this dish. So when I was a very young woman, I lived in Chicago, and one of my favorite places to go was the very first original Einstein Brothers Bagel Company, which was off of the Magnificent Mile. And it was in one of those little townhouse kind of situations. You walked up a little flight of stairs. The actual brothers were there making bagels. And they had this incredible chili, and it had cashews in it and raisins in it. And I just always loved their chili so much. So, so cashews are not migraine friendly, so you could use pumpkin seeds if you wanted to add this step. But this is a great way to extend your meat protein. So by adding nuts, by adding beans, we're going to get probably 10 or 12 servings of this, which I'll probably freeze half of it. We'll be eating this for a couple of weeks. And you can also make it, without the meat, and then have that extra protein, makes it real plunky, like Microwave Boy likes to say. And the raisins are optional. So I usually use about a cup of cashews when I do it, and up to a cup of raisins, and then a tiny bit, as I'm just stirring everything together, of some kind of sweetness. A little maple syrup, a little brown sugar, a little coconut sugar, and that just somehow brings everything, kind of melds it all together in a really beautiful way. So, so those are the kind of special ingredients that you might not be expecting in a chili, but trust me, it's super good. And this, so I pulled the meat out 2 days ago, a day and a half ago, and was in the fridge from the freezer. So it looks like it's still a little bit frozen on top. So I'll just show you kind of how I deal with that. So what I'm going to do, or let me just give you a little look-see in the pan. Unfortunately, there's no way to do glass pans. And we don't have overhead cameras in this kitchen because we're a normal kitchen. So you can see that the oil is beginning to brown on the bottom. I'm getting a lot more color. The onions are definitely getting a lot more brown. And I am starting to see some color on the carrot. So that's good for me to put the meat in. So what I like to do so I get a nice browning on the meat is I push the vegetables out of the way to sort of make a space in the bottom of the pan. And then I flip this over into that space. And you hear that satisfying sizzle. And then what I like to do is just press gently down on the meat, and I can tell that it is still fairly frozen, but that's not a problem. It'll thaw okay. But I want to give it a minute or two, and then I'm going to kind of cut it in half and flip it over so I get some browning on both sides before I start breaking it up. And then once that's broken up and the meat doesn't have to be fully cooked, you just kind of want it to start getting brown before you add all the wet ingredients. So it's about a teaspoon of cumin, and I was low on cumin, so I ground some this morning in my coffee grinder. So I'm just going to measure that out while I'm waiting for that meat to kind of brown up. Daisy, this is her thing. She likes to go outside when we start, then she comes in. She knows I'm talking to someone, she doesn't know who. So sometimes she'll show off and start playing during these. Usually you just kind of see the tip of her tail as she walks by. She's not a super social dog, but she's a lovely, lovely soul. We just adore having her. And I heard this morning that there was a particular shelter that announced that they actually got rid of every single dog was adopted during this quarantine period because people are realizing they want pets, and I just thought that was really wonderful. I do hope those people continue to take care for those pets after this is all over. But yeah, they're great. So people who have pets, dogs, all the pets are wonderful. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, it's a thin metal spatula that's fairly sharp, and yay, it is thawed enough that I can cut through it. And then what I like to do is just flip the whole kind of piece over, so I'm getting some nice browning on the, I'll just pick that up again and show you so you can see what I was looking for. So it's not fully brown, not fully cooked for sure, and it is still somewhat frozen in the middle, but that's not a problem because this is going to simmer for at least 30, but I really recommend at least 45 minutes for the flavors to really meld. So, and then I give it, another minute or two on that side, and then what I do is you don't want to mess with the ground meat too much because it mucks up the texture a little bit. So what I like to do is once it's been flipped over, so it's already kind of cut wavy crosswise that way, so I just cut across it with this guy just to kind of break it up into smaller pieces, and then, oops, fortunately the spatula's seen better days, but it's an awesome spatula. I'm going to pick this up again so you can see what I just did. So what I do,
I think that's actually, is that a cookie spatula?
it is actually a very thin cookie spatula. I'm going to have to see if I can find another one. My friend Carolyn gave it to me for Christmas years and years and years ago, and then my friend Mike repaired it when it broke, but it's already breaking again. It's very sad. So you can kind of see, hopefully, that I kind of cross-cut it, and it's not ideal to be pulling it out, I don't think, but I want you to see what I'm doing. And then, so now we're good to add all the other ingredients, so that makes it super easy. So my beans are going in. Usually what I do is I put my dry spices. This is a salt-free recipe. It's very high flavor, but of course you can add a little bit of salt at this stage if you're a salt person. I would say like half a teaspoon to a teaspoon, no more, because the meat naturally has some sodium in it. I like to put the spices right on the meat so the meat really absorbs that flavor, especially turkey, which is a much lighter flavored meat. And I'm going to add my black beans. Let's see here. And my bell pepper. So this is about a half a bell pepper is what I had, but I love to have a full bell pepper in there. It adds just really nice sweetness and texture. I'm going to add my cashews. I'm skipping the delightful raisins because I'm making a German sweetbread for Easter Sunday that my mom used to make called Stollen. And it has the raisins soaked in rum, and these are the only raisins I have in the house, so holding on to those.
We're rationing raisins.
I'm rationing the raisins. And I'm not complaining because that is a very unimportant thing given what everybody's dealing with right now. But yeah, so this is what I wanted to kind of showcase is that this is very adaptable. So depending on what you have, if you happen to have 5 pounds of raisins and you want to throw a couple of raisins in there, great. It's going to taste really nice. And then I don't even measure the sweetener, but maybe 2 teaspoons is probably about what went in there. All right, so I'm going to stir this around, and then the lid's going on. Now the only other thing you kind of need to take a look at is, does it need just a half a cup of water? Because you want it to have enough moisture that it's all going to meld together. And if it's very dry at this stage, because you can also use, if you have the large 28-ounce can of tomatoes, you can totally use that. I had less because I used some of the tomatoes yesterday. So this was a 28-ounce can minus 1 cup. Yeah, this is looking a little on the dry side, so I am going to add, and I'll just pick it up one last time to show you what I mean by on the dry side. Just want to get all the little ingredients in here. Let me just show you what I mean by that. So, so you can see it's a very full container. It's going to make a lot of chili, but it's pretty dry. So what I want to do is I'm going to add like half a cup of filtered water to that, and then put a lid on it, Gonna bring it just to a boil, and then turn it down to where it's simmering. So you're just seeing little bubbles popping up now and again. That's where you want it to be. Cook it for 30 minutes minimum, 45, 60. The flavor's just gonna continue to build and grow. And then you can taste it. Maybe you wanna add a little more chili powder, cook it another 10 minutes. If you wanna add a little salt at that point, we just add salt at the table to taste. So that way, everybody can kind of adjust to what they like. So anyway, I will post the original recipe, which is the vegan version, in the comments of this video. If you're watching on YouTube, please follow me on Facebook, Stephanie Weaver MPH. I'm S Weaver MPH on all the other platforms, and I look forward to seeing you guys again. Hope you're staying well, and stay inside, wear masks when you're outside. Try to eat as healthy as you can right now because it's really good for our immune systems. And feel free to share, and please share this. Like if this is something you're finding useful, please let people know. I'm not making any money off this. It's really just a way to be of service to people during this time period. So I appreciate it. Thanks again. Take care. Bye.